UFC Fight Night, Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues. Main card starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, prelims at 4 p.m. Eastern, and the card's not that bad. Some decent fights throughout. Main event is another shot for Jared Cannonier to beat the rising contenders. He fought against Kyle Barallo, Nasruddin Imavov, and now it's Gregory Rodrigues. The co-main event is similar as well, Kattar versus Youssef Zalal, and various other good fights on the card. There's 13 total fights. 5 fights got canceled or changed. We'll start with the prospect of the card. The best prospect has to be Youssef Zalal, right? He is fighting Kattar, so if he wins, he will be ranked. He might be currently the best fighter on this entire card. The fighter of the night, I guess Jared Cannonier is the fighter of the night. He's the biggest name on the card. He is the highest ranked fighter on the card, former title challenger. The stake of the night, the fighter that needs a win, I would say is Jared Cannonier. He has 2 losses in a row. If he loses to Gregory Rodrigues, that is it for him as a top contender of the middleweight division. You could also say Kattar, who's on a 3-loss streak, but 2 of those have an asterisk, right? He arguably should have won against Josh Emmett, and he had a knee injury against Arnold Allen. So therefore, I'll say Jared Cannonier. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, it's Gabriel Bonfim versus Chaos Williams. Most likely going to be a finish. Either Chaos knocks him out or Bonfim gets knocked out himself or a submission. Should be a fun fight. The sleeper of the night, the most underrated fight on the card, I think is Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadikov. Both very good fighters. And then the overall fight of the night, I believe, is also Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadikov. And with that, let's go to the first fight between Julia Avila and Jacqueline Cavalcante. I'm gonna go with Cavalcante by a decision. She's longer, seems to have the strength advantage, has good takedown defense. Avila is stiff and slow, so Cavalcante should be able to land punches in bulk, a lot of combinations, jabs, right straights, while Julia Avila is trying to get into the clinch or throw some counter punches of her own. It's gonna be interesting if Julia Avila is gonna try to take the fight to the ground herself or keep it standing with the longer, in my opinion, better striker of the two. And then we go to the heavyweight division. Walter Walker versus the new top 15 ranked Dontel Mayes. After losing to the GOAT Shamil Gaziev, I mean, a touch of the GOAT makes you a top 15 fighter, I guess. Strange how he's in the top 15, but I think Walter Walker is going to win. I think he's going to win by a decision. Mayes has more lethal striking, he has faster hand speed. Walker's striking is not great, but this is a clear difference in style, where Walter Walker has the grappling advantage, Dontel Mayes has the striking advantage. Both are big fighters. And it's not going to be the highest level fight, but Dontel Mayes does have a chance to land some big punch of Walter Walker in the stand-up and knock him out, but I do think the wrestling is going to be the biggest difference there. And then we have Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. I think Smith wins by a decision, even though he has the punching power. He has a speed advantage, he has the counter right that has floored many fighters, but Morales has better striking defense than most of Smith's opponents. He resets a lot after exchanges, and that can give control of distance to Smith to line up his punches better. But Morales has great submissions and needs to mix in takedowns to give himself a chance to win. Then we go to the banger of the card, Gabriel Bonfim versus Chaos Williams. I'm actually going with Chaos Williams by a 3rd round TKO. He has insane one-punch knockout power, fast hand speed, but not great boxing technique. So sometimes it looks like he's not punching fast, but it's because he's swinging so heavily at wide angles. Whereas if he tighten up his punching form, his punches will seem like they're faster, and he would just be better in general. But Bonfim has the better boxing technique and is more well-rounded. He has great submissions, he has an excellent guillotine, and needs a mix in takedowns to better his chances of winning the fight. It's very similar to a lot of other fights on this card, but the thing is, Chaos has a better chin, he has better attributes overall, including cardio with his power, but Bonfim has the better skill. Bonfim's boxing skill and a mix of takedowns will let him swim long enough until he exhausts himself in the 3rd round, and I think from there, Chaos drops him and finishes with ground and pound. The reach and striking skill of Bonfim will get Chaos to miss a lot of punches, just like when Chaos fought Randy Brown, but Bonfim doesn't have that cardio like Randy Brown does, and especially against a fighter who will bring the fight to him. Chaos Williams will explode with his shots. Maybe in the 1st round he misses a lot of punches, but eventually as Bonfim is slowing down and Chaos is defending the takedowns, he's getting up from the bottom, he's defending against the submissions and having a good enough of a chin to take Bonfim's best punches. I think eventually Chaos will rally in the 3rd round and finish Bonfim. One of the best fights on the entire card. But then we go to Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar. I'm going with Estevam by a decision. Constant takedowns, great top control, rear naked chokes, just a hailstorm of grappling from Estevam. I think will win him the fight. Aguilar is the better striker, but he has some of the worst takedown defense in the UFC. It's like 30-something%. It's insane. And then we go to Jared Gordon versus Mashraban Ruzaboyev. I'm going Jared Gordon by a decision. I think Ruzaboyev is way too wild with his punches. He throws overhands, crazy looping shots, and I think Jared Gordon will stay technical, throw down straight punches, jabs, straights, get into the clinch, land shots there, as Ruzaboyev is just throwing with all of his power into every strike he throws. So Jared Gordon by a decision. And then we go to Angela Hill versus Caitlin Souza. I'm gonna go with Caitlin Souza. Angela Hill is just not in her prime anymore. She's slower than before, and Caitlin Souza hits harder. She's well-rounded, has good submissions, just like in her last fight, getting the rear naked choke after dropping her opponent with the left hook. And Angela Hill just not the same fighter. She's technically, I think, a better better striker on paper. I think in her prime, she should win this fight, but not now. I think with Jose Delgado versus Connor Matthews, I think Delgado wins by a TKO. He's a switch stance power puncher, excellent knees, one in the contender series with one. Matthews also switches stances but leans away from punches often, and that aligns aggressive switch stance combos. Bazookia was landing reaching overhands and hooks as Matthews is leaning away from him, so he has great kicks, could land a head kick as Matthews is leaning away or trying to defend the punches. I can see Jose Delgado switching stances forward, laying those punches right through the chin, dropping Connor Matthews and finishing him on the ground. Then we go to the grappling match between Rodolfo Vieira and Andre Petroski. I think Vieira is going to win by a submission. He has better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Petroski has the cardio, he has the better wrestling, but is it good enough to defend all of the takedowns from Vieira? Neither fighter have great striking. I would say maybe Petroski has better offensive striking, whereas Vieira is more defensive. If Vieira's going to be shooting takedowns, I think more often Petroski will. Petroski's going to most likely want to keep the fight standing, but if he wants to test the grappling with Vieira, that would be very interesting, right? Because I do think Vieira is definitely better on the ground. And the thing is, it will be harder to get Petroski to the ground at the center of the cage, but Vieira should have more success chain wrestling on the fence. And he will be more impactful once he gets the takedowns with going for submissions, transitions, and stuff like that. So I think Rodolfo Vieira should win the fight by either a submission or a decision. And then we go to Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadikov. I think this is the best fight on the card, but I have Bonfim winning by a decision in nearly an even fight. Nazim has great composure and pressure, always walking the opponent down, but he doesn't check leg kicks. So the pressure could stop his opponent from throwing leg kicks because they're walking back, but at the same time, Slava Claus is landing a lot of leg kicks and body shots. Ismail Bonfim could do the same thing. Whether Nazim is in orthodox or southpaw, Bonfim will switch kick at the legs as southpaw fighters. He did that against Vince Pichel. Nazim has good wrestling, but hasn't used them much except against Slava Claus. Bonfim is a way better grappler than Slava Claus. He has great submissions, specifically the guillotine that he and his brother are so effective with, right? And maybe the leg kicks and body punches of Bonfim will force Nazim to wrestle more, which can open up the guillotine strategically for Bonfim. So Bonfim is very powerful, but he has wilder punching form than Slava Claus. He could knock Nazim out, but he can get very sluggish when he's throwing punches, leaving openings for counters from Nazim. And those openings will be there consistently as Nazim is constantly walking his opponent down. So there's gonna be constant striking exchanges between them, and every time Bonfim is loading up on his punches, Nazim can counter him in almost all of those exchanges. So it should be a great fight. I do have Bonfim winning by a decision. If there's any other fight to watch besides the main and co-main events, I would say tune in for this fight. And then we go to Edmund Shabazian versus Dilian Budka. I'm going Shabazian by TKO. Dilian Budka fought a striking specialist and got TKO'd after he was trying to get the takedown, and he got dominated on the ground against a grappler in Andre Petroski. So Cesar Almeida knocked him out defending takedowns. Andre Petroski beat him on the ground. He's a well-rounded fighter, but just isn't like exceptional anywhere, you know? I think Edmund's the better striker. He might be stronger, he has better cardio, and just overall a better fighter. Budka gassed out after the first round against Cesar Almeida. Like, Edmund Shabazian doesn't have the best cardio, but he doesn't gas out after the first round like that. And then we go to the co-main event, Kelvin Kattar versus Youssef Zalal. I got Zalal by decision. Big step up in competition for him. Going from fighting Jack Shore to Kelvin Kattar is another level, but he's a patient striker and more well-rounded than Kelvin Kattar. He has good kicks, good counters, offensively good knees, good footwork, and should mix in the takedowns, as just striking with Kattar gives Kattar opportunities to land the knockout, right? Kattar's gonna be throwing punches with him. He's gonna try and line up the 1-2, straight right down the center, and get that knockout. But when Kelvin Kattar fought Aljamain Sterling, he was fighting defensively because Aljamain was shooting a lot of takedowns. If Youssef Zalal does the same thing, I think his chance of winning the fight increase. Zalal has good head movement and is fast, but he does keep his hands low. Kattar could double jab to line up the straight right. He also has good takedown defense, although it didn't seem like it against Eljo. I think Eljo is way better at grappling than Zalal, and maybe a fighter like Dan Ige is closer to Zalal's level, and Kattar defended all 9 of Ige's takedowns, beating him by decision, but Kattar might not be in his prime anymore, so I'm going with Youssef Zalal by decision. I think a prime Kelvin Kattar, the one that fought Giga Shikadze, could beat Zalal. Not 100%, but he could beat him. But in his current form, I think Zalal beats him in both the striking and grappling. And then we go to the main event, Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues. I don't know what to think about Cannonier's chances. He's good enough a year ago to fight competitively with Nasruddin Imavov, showing that he is still good, but will he just get overpowered in the grappling by Rodrigues? Cannonier is a more technical striker, he has more experience, he's extremely powerful and has a good style to beat Rodrigues, but he's 40 and clearly not in his prime anymore. The question is, if he is declining declining rapidly or slowly. I don't know how he's gonna look in this fight. It's a big step down in competition, and Rodrigues is in his prime and on a win streak. Rodrigues walks forward and can get intercepted by Cannonier's punches, but I think the grappling and toughness will be the difference for Rodrigues. Cannonier never had stellar grappling skills. He was always just good enough to not get finished on the ground and sometimes fight to get on his feet. But Rodrigues is actually the most dangerous grappler Cannonier has ever fought in the middleweight division. Rodrigues is strong in the clinch and even better ground and pound. I think Cannonier will have good moments landing counters and maybe even hurting Rodrigues with those counters, but I think this is the fight that shows that Cannonier is not the same fighter he used to be. I'm going with Gregory Rodrigues by a third round submission. Now let's go to the betting odds here. So Rodrigues is a minus 230 favorite against a plus 190 Jared Cannonier. I agree with that. Youssef Zalal is a minus 500 against a plus 380 Calvin Kattar. That's kind of crazy. Kattar has a realistic chance of winning that fight. I don't know why he's a 4-1 underdog. That's crazy. Zalal has his hands low when he's moving back and stuff. I can see Kattar landing a big punch and getting that knockout. Also, Kattar's on a 3-fight loss streak. He might have like the motivation to try to get the knockout, not lose a 4th in a row. Right, Calvin Kattar is a fighter at heart, so I think Zalal is going to fight a dangerous Calvin Kattar. Being a 5-1 favorite is kind of insane. Altogether, I wouldn't bet on that fight. Emma Shabazian, a minus 380 against a plus 300 Dylan Budka. I agree with that. Ishmael Bonfim, the minus 220 against the plus 180 Nazim Sadikov. I think it's much closer than that, but it's a fight I would not bet on. It's too competitive. Adolfo Vieira is a minus 275 against a plus 225 Andre Petrosky. Vieira is too big of a favorite to bet on him, and Petrosky can win the fight. That's another fight I would not bet on. Jose Delgado is a minus 420 against a plus 320 Conor Matthews. I could agree with that, but I would only pick Delgado by a parlay. Angela Hill and Caitlin Souza is about to pick him. I think those are good odds for Caitlin Souza. I do think she should win the fight and be a favorite going into it. Jared Gordon at minus 375 against a plus 295 Ruzaboyev. I think Gordon's too big of a favorite, although he should win the fight, so maybe Gordon with a parlay. Rafael Estevam is a minus 480 against a plus 360 Aguilar. I could agree with that. Maybe Estevam also good for a parlay. Gabriel Bonfim, like a minus 220, 240 against a plus 180 Chaos Williams. I think those are good odds for Chaos Williams to win. Elijah Smith, a minus 142 against a plus 120 Vince Morales. Good betting lines for Elijah Smith. Walter Walker is a minus 250 against a plus 205 Dantal Mayes. Walter Walker for a parlay is good. And then Jacqueline Cavalcante is a minus 700 against a plus 500 Julia Avila. I guess a parlay maybe for Cavalcante. She should win the fight. You're not going to win too much if you just bet on her alone. So maybe she wins by a decision on a parlay. So those are my picks. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe at the button for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.